Councillors, officers and members of the public, welcome to the Wednesday 17th of April 2024 Development Assessment Committee meeting. I will now open the meeting with present and apologies. I have 6 councillors in the room. I do not have Councillor Edwards. No, I haven't heard. No, all right. Item 3, recording of meeting. In accordance with Moorabool Shire Council's governance rules, the Council will be recording and live streaming this meeting. Items 4 and 5, matters arising from previous minutes and confirmation of minutes. Councillors, do I have any questions in regards to last month's meeting minutes? No. Do I have a mover for the item? Thank you, Councillor Ward. Seconder? Councillor Tatchell. Any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. Item 6, disclosure of conflicts of interest. Councillors, does anyone have a conflict of interest to declare? No. Item 7, community planning reports. I have item 7.1, use and development of 5 warehouses and a reduction of car parking, 2 car park spaces at 15 to 19 Hillside Street, Madingley. There are no speakers to this item. Do I have a councillor to move the recommendation, or do I have any questions? Councillor Ward, you
happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Dudzik to second. Any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. Item 7.2, development of 2 dwellings to the rear of an existing dwelling, 3-lot subdivision and removal of vegetation at 80 English Street, Balan. We have 3 speakers to this item. Greg Linsdell has provided a written submission to this item and I will take it as read from all councillors. Robert Estelle has registered to speak to this item and will be appearing in person. Yes, Robert. Robert, would you like to take a seat to address council? Robert, you have 3 minutes to speak, after which time councillors will be asked if they would like to ask any questions. Thank you. Just press the button for the microphone.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm representing my sister-in-law Judith Hodgen, who abuts the property, and she's ill this evening, but she had asked me to speak on her behalf as I did last time. Judith did write to the officers back in early February and said that she had no objections to the proposal, but there were problems that haven't been addressed, and she believes they still haven't been addressed. In summary, she believes that it's an overdevelopment of the site. The units, the 2 new units, are too big and too high out of the ground, and in simple terms, there's also issues with the retaining wall, and there's also issues with the potential for there's a potential, we're not sure whether there's ever been a permit or a structural engineer's report done on the retaining wall, and she's concerned there's potential for that retaining wall with hydrostatic pressure behind it to push on her fence and move into her property. And there's also a question about the drainage. At the moment, in the reports, the drainage through the property below that's now owned by the Linsdells, the plans show a 150mm diameter pipe to service this development property. But we haven't noticed it there. On the plans, it appears that my son's 150mm diameter pipe coming from his property is what they've picked up as maybe being the drainage that serves this development at the top of the hill. I rang the lady who built Stephanie Day, who a lot of you may know, and her husband's the one that designed this building, an architect. She built about 15 years ago on that top block, and I spoke to her during the week because I could see from the report that the drainage hadn't been considered or reconsidered in light of our previous submissions. And she said that in her opinion, when she built about 15 years ago, there was no drainage outfall, and when her builder went to get the approval where to discharge, she was told by council, and it happened, she just discharged into the centre of the block, so the water runs down the hill from that point. Now, it could be that no one found the original pipe and it's still there, but who knows? It needs to be found. With regards to the drainage calculations, the drainage report that was provided by council dated the 15th of February 2023 has a catchment area on the site of 836 square metres, yet the total area is 1,098. So the calculations are wrong. Since the original survey plan that the drainage engineers considered had the wrong levels on it because the site had been filled, they've done their report without proper levels, and that may also make a minor change to their outlet, their outcome. With regards to...
Mr Estelle, I just wanted to remind you, we're just at the 3-minute mark, so if we could...
Yes, no...
Thank you.
Overall, the only other issue that, as an issue that I'd picked up is that the front house is not getting a carport, which it should, if council's consistent with the way that they treated Fort Fiskin Street a few years ago. But other than that, that's all I have to say on behalf of Judith.
Thank you, Mr Estelle. Councillors, is there any question for Mr Estelle? Councillor Dudzik.
My question was of officers.
To officers,
if that's right.
Yep, that's fine.
My question is, can they please explain what has changed in the plans that are before us tonight as compared to the last DAC meeting?
Thank you, Councillor Dudzik. I'll pass to Mr Lovell. Thank you.
Okay, through the chair. So the change being made is a licensed land surveyor has been engaged. They've submitted a feature survey, a spot level survey and a re-establishment survey. And it's shown in attachment number 3 in your papers, and they've done a red bubble around. The reason why they've done that is because they did a survey in 2020 and now they've done a new survey as of February 2024. And that survey picked up different spot levels on the site because of changes to topography on the site in that last 4 years. And they've also picked up features that weren't previously on the site, such as the concrete retaining wall, which runs along the back boundary. And they've subsequently amended their plans to reflect the current correct levels to Australian height datum.
Thank you, Mr Lovell. I'll go. Councillor Ward, you had a question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is also a question for officers. I actually have 2 questions, if I may. The first question relates, I'm just addressing a couple of the items I picked up from the Speaker. The first item is about the concerns about the retaining walls. I note that retaining walls less than 1 metre in depth do not require a building permit. If it exceeds 1 metre in height, a building permit is required. How high are the retaining walls, please, Mr Lovell?
Okay, so on the feature plan, it does actually show levels of the retaining wall. Now, there is a slope from east to west of approximately 600 mil. They've done a spot level in front of the retaining wall, so it's approximately 800 mil high at the retaining wall.
Okay, thank you. If I may, Madam Mayor,
Yep.
the second one, just I know a stormwater management plan has been done, but our Speaker did raise some issues about concerns about the drainage. Do you think they've adequately been addressed in the stormwater management plan?
So there, through the chair, there was a stormwater management plan submitted. It did show stormwater being controlled for dwellings 2 and 3, but not for dwelling 1. Stormwater has to be done in accordance with our engineering requirements. This site can be developed and still have stormwater to a legal point of discharge, and that is a requirement that it has to comply with the minimum standards for drainage of both dwellings.
Thank you, Mr Lovell. Councillor Berry, did you have a question?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, mine's to officers also, and it might be a similar answer that comes via, because mine, I just picked up that Mr Eskdale did mention, were the original pipes investigated? Has that been done? It may be related to the same question Councillor Ward had.
Thank you, Mr Lovell.
Yes, so that's why as I mentioned before, that bubble was placed around. So spot levels at the front of the site are unchanged over the last 4 years. It was the levels to that middle and rear section that were altered. And as a result, the applicant did amend dwelling 2, which is the middle unit, and they've actually reduced it by 600 mil based on the change to the surface levels.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr Eskdale or officers? Councillor Tatchell.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. First, I'll just go back to a question with Robert in terms of, you mentioned the calculations at 837 on the drainage part.
Yes,
were
when
miscalculated.
the council staff sent through a copy of the drainage report, which was very good of them, but when I went through it, there seemed to be an issue there where the property that we're draining is 1,098 square metres, yet the calculations that were used by the person preparing the outfall so that they could confirm that the pipe that may be there takes the water, they've only used an area of 836 square metres. So I found that interesting. They also, at the moment, the existing house has I think it's shown on the plans, a 10,000 litre tank, but the outfall from that wasn't shown on the report either. I do know that it's not a detailed report, it's a proposal, but when they get the area wrong, it just means to me that, and we pointed this out to staff back in January, February this year, that it was something that was concerning us, and maybe there was a logical answer, I don't know, but we just haven't had a response to that. And just picking up on one other thing, my reading of the levels is that the average height of the retaining wall is 1.3 metres, not 0.8 from the levels that are shown using my magnifying glass.
Councillor Tatchell.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I suppose the obvious question that comes from that is that since there's some conjecture over the calculations of how the discharge was tuned.
I'm sure they could be asked to review it.
Yeah, well, it's a 15% differential, which to my mind seems fairly, I understand it's not an exact science.
It'd be nice to get it right.
Yeah, 15% sounds right. So my question is to officers, is 15% an acceptable level of differential in terms of when you're calculating the mass versus the drainage on this particular project?
Mr Lovell.
Yeah, so through the Chair, the stormwater management plan that was provided, it was only provided for planning purposes, not designed as a construction plan, and did make that note on the plans. So any adjustments can be made, whether it's an increase in area to include, lot 1, and it can include, different piping to accommodate that stormwater discharge. They are required to do it as part of the building stage to do a legal point of discharge, and it has to, as I said before, comply with the minimum standards.
Thank you, Mr Lovell. Councillor Tatchell.
Yeah, I suppose following on from that question, I suppose the obvious thing is that in terms of we rely on a discharge plan that's not an exact science, and we don't have anything within the recommendation or the conditions that would allow us to enforce that. So we'd be once again relying on a discharge plan that's not an exact science. And in consideration that this whole plan, the conjecture from day one is about drainage, would it be prudent to at least make sure that when we calculate the actual discharge, that we're working with a number that's at least relevant to the plan? So my question is, once again, similar. Is 15% acceptable when we don't have a condition within the recommendation that we can force compliance with?
Mr Lovell.
So whether it be 15% or even a greater percentage if it was inaccurate, it doesn't impact that the site has the ability to have a legal point of discharge and to have stormwater managed effectively on site. There is a drainage easement right in the corner of the site, and the applicant, if they've got to conduct larger pipes, larger rainwater tanks, that would all be done at a building permit stage. And as I said before, the plans submitted were only to assist objectors in knowing what type of works may impact on their property.
Councillor Tatchell.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I suppose when you've got conjecture over an objection to a plan, and then you need to make a decision based on that maybe we need to have something within the recommendation and the compliance of this, or the ability to maintain this, because we've seen it before where things get out of control. So the question that follows on from that, on the basis that the retaining wall, from what I can gather, is solid concrete, and whilst it's a very small plan, I have noticed that I don't see how that cannot be a hindrance or a blockage in terms of the overall drainage of this property, taking into consideration the topography and in consideration of where the properties are below. So what safeguard do we have in place to ensure that the people don't have unintended consequences to a drainage plan that, by our own omission, is not an exact science? Because I'd hate to think an exact science when the place got flooded below might have been in order at the time. Madam Chair.
Would Mr Lovell like to comment on that?
I suppose the comment to also make that the retaining wall does not go the full length, so the full width of the property, and where the drainage easement is located, that is where the pipes will all connect to, which is basically the north east corner, which is the drainage easement.
Councillor
Sorry, Madam
Tatchell.
Chair, I'm going to ask another question, but I'll go back to the Speaker, because I noted in the 3-minute reference towards this property that there were some issues retaining to that pipe work.
Yeah, the pipework and the retaining wall, and our previous submission to council, the retaining wall does go the full width of the property, and it goes up approximately 15 metres along the side, so that from the height, the land's going that way, it gradually tapers back. And that side taper what is against Judith's property and that she's concerned about. Now, the other thing is when they put it in, if that pipe was there, it could be the heavy concrete foundations actually upset that pipe. So not only if the pipe's there, if it's found, it could be once it's tested, it could be a problem. I don't know. All I know is that from my reading, the levels, that's 1.3 metres high. It should have had a building permit. It should have been structurally designed. As a civil engineer, you always put agricultural drains behind the pipe so that any hydrostatic pressure that builds up during winter can't, if you've got expansive clays, it'll force the retaining wall to tip over, and that's what Judith is certainly concerned about, and I know the people below are concerned about.
Councillor Tatchell, you have another question?
Yeah, and I don't want to labour on this too much, but understanding there may be some conjecture over what is the permitted size without a permit for a retaining wall, on the basis that the whole discussion and argument is about drainage in particular, regardless of whether it needs a permit or not for the retaining wall in terms of height, that can be sorted out later. But I note within both the plan and the document in front of us that the aggregation required behind the retaining wall to ensure distribution of the water, there would at least need to be some form of hydrostatic report on the basis that it's being retarded. So if it wasn't being retarded, I understand that the the process would be as per normal, it would be calculated as per what the
It could be
drainage
there's
is.
one there, but we don't know. Agricultural drainage behind it, we don't know.
Yeah, well, we don't want the Shagpole land in the Werribee River. So the question would be, would it be prudent to have a hydrostatic test associated to, regardless whether the retaining wall needs to be put in place or not, to ensure that the materials used in that process are compliant with what the end result should be in terms of the drainage, regardless of whether it's an exact science or not. So I don't know who we can ask that. There's two engineers in the room and I'm broken down, so I spent a long time since I did
Not
any
too old.
engineering.
Mr Bazout now or Mr Lovell?
Through the chair, just to explain the particularly difference between planning and building. Planning can control certain things or have conditions, particularly from our engineers, but as far as construction of civil works, that is a separate process. And if it goes down the path that a building surveyor says no, it doesn't work, or no, there are certain engineering requirements that cannot be fulfilled, then that development doesn't go ahead. That is the step which looks at the engineering of the site, and that's not only just the civil works, but it's also the structural works of the building.
Councillor Tatchell.
And I ask this with the utmost respect too, but if that was the case and it was non-compliant at the point of building permit, and we had an issue in terms of compliance at the building permit stage, we would have already approved the planning permit for three dwellings on this property, where it may not be able to be complied with at that point because we don't have the relevant information at the point of approval of planning. So does that put the horse at the wrong end of the cart?
Mr Lovell.
No, because, as I said, the drainage works are always post-planning. What planning can do is, there may be requirements for earthworks, or there may be requirements which could change topography, which would then alter the civil works down the track. But there is a whole process involved with that drainage approval, and there are engineered solutions for it. We are an established residential area. We do have legal point of discharges. It is about constructing to those requirements.
Thank you, Mr Lovell.
I'll wait till the next speakers, Madam Chair, and then I'll have some questions at the end. Thank you.
Councillor Dudzik, you have a question.
Through the chair, I'd like to ask if Mr Escale has actually seen the revised plans and if they actually helped alleviate some of his concerns.
I've seen the revised plans and they do now show what is happening, because before the fill hadn't been shown and it artificially made the height overviewing of the property even worse, but it has improved. So I wouldn't be critical of the changes that were asked for, and they certainly have helped. The surveyor's plan, as I say, now picks up that there is a retaining wall there, and it doesn't, and it shows a lot of spot levels along both the top and the bottom as it slopes away, and that's where I've averaged out 1.3. Someone else might average out 1.29. I don't know, but it's more, I would have thought, closer to 1.3 metres average than the other. But once you go round along the side boundaries, it tapers back.
Thank you, Mr Escale. Is there any other questions for either Mr Escale or officers? Nope. Thank you, Mr Escale.
Thank
You
you
can
very
take your seat. Okay, we have two other people to speak tonight, and that is Mandy and Ryan Delector. Would you like to take us?
I said I was coming. So she said there's only two
No?
more.
Yes, I only have, for this item, I have a written submission from Mr Linsdell, and in person is Mr Exdale, and in person is Mandy and Ryan Delector.
I sent your emails and said I'm coming.
Yes, Councillor Tatchell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, the DAC was set up to allow, so whilst there may be an issue in terms of who was written down to speak, I think in all fairness to everybody, it wouldn't be inappropriate to allow the speaker. It may need to be done by a motion or at the councillor's discretion or the mayor's discretion. But if there is a conjecture and it turns out that the applicant or the objector has complied to be allowed to speak, and then we were found later after a decision that that was not to happen, then we would have no alternative but to defer the item until that was resolved.
Okay, so you're both quite adamant that there has been a mistake. What I will do, if councillors are comfortable, Councillor Sullivan, you would like to add?
Just a question, if I may.
Yes, that's
so
fine.
there is evidence, information rather, at council that the emails have come in?
Yes? Well, we're not sure.
Okay.
Really? Okay, so obviously the discretion of myself, and so I think for starters, I think I would like to give Mandy and Ryan Delector the chance to speak. So I will invite them to sit, and then I will make my decision. Thank you. Thank you. I'm assuming Mr. and Mrs. Delector? No? I thought I'd check. Brother and sister? Okay. All right, I'll just go Mandy and Ryan. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for coming. And so because you've registered as a group, you have 3 minutes to speak, and then councillors can ask questions if they'd like. Thank you.
Absolutely. First off, I'd like to say objectors definitely should have their right to speak, so I'd be all for them too.
Thank you.
If there's anything that is brought up that shouldn't be done, then we shouldn't be doing it. So,
thank you for mentioning that.
Basically, I guess I think we've tried to cover everything we can as far as what we should do before we go ahead with what I'm hoping I can do. So I'm just not too sure on what else we can do from our end to ensure we are trying to meet the stage of getting the planning approved, I guess. Yeah, because as I said, the things that we are worried about at the moment, or that what people are worried about, will be sorted out during the construction phase, because I'm not looking to build anything that's not going to meet the current standards, rules and regulations around the construction industry, because I know that that's what we do here in Australia, Victoria. We do it right, so and that's what I intend to do. So that's sort of all I can say.
Thank you, Ryan. Mandy, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say with the review of the surveyor's plan, it actually reduced the height of the buildings down. So they're actually dwelling 2 is 600 mil lower, and dwelling 3 is 200 mil lower. So that would appease the building regulations in terms of privacy and overseeing other people's private areas. So that actually improved that point of the building regulations, yeah.
Right. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Councillors, do we have any questions? Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ryan, I think you would have heard from the previous speaker that one of the big concerns is about A, the structural integrity of that retaining wall, and B, the drainage. Mr Lovell mentioned about the stormwater management plan. Can you, I suppose, just outline again your plans to deal with those, because they obviously for residents abutting the property, it is a justifiable concern. So can you just again talk us through your plans for that, please?
As far as the wall and the storm management, yeah. So I guess to start with the wall, I'm not looking to build houses that are going to slide down a property. So I want to make sure that wall is structurally sound as well. So I'm willing to get that looked at by whoever needs to look at it to make sure it has been constructed appropriately. And to follow on with that, I think the buildings themselves shouldn't, if they are engineered correctly, which I would hope they would be by an engineer, that they shouldn't impact that anyway. They should be able to sort of stand there on their own, we would hope. But as far as stormwater management, I'm a plumber myself, so I sort of know what needs to be done, but that has nothing to do with what will be done, because basically I'll be told by an engineer, stormwater engineer, which we did engage, and if he's done that incorrectly or made a mistake, that's something that I would love that's been picked up, because I want that done right. So we'll be guided by...
At the building permit stage.
Yeah, at the building permit stage, yeah. It'll be all done by the book, by the letter. So that's sort of all I can comment on that, yeah. I guess, and the other thing is, if the pipe that is there that I have seen myself physically, I've seen that. I was going to look for photos, but I didn't want to be rude. If that isn't up to what I'm proposing we do, then I will definitely be getting that changed to what it needs to down the easement that is down that property, which I believe I would have the right to do. Yeah, so whatever needs to be done will be done, and that's basically, I'll be told what to do, basically, by people. Yeah, so, sorry.
Councillors, any other questions? No? Thank you, Mandy. Thank you, Ryan. You can take your seat.
Thank you.
Okay. I will call Julie. Would you like to take the chair? I'll just remind you that
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Thank you.
Be quick. Thank you everyone for having me, and I don't know what happened there, but this retaining wall. I called council in 2020, 2021. I couldn't remember. All I know it was COVID. And I spoke to someone, I said, the man is building a retaining wall and I know this needs a permit. Is there a permit? I was told there's no permit. I said, I can tell you this man is building a retaining wall. We will come out and we will look at it and we will measure it. I said, that's fine. No one ever went out and measured it. If someone had done it, we wouldn't be here today. This person assured me, I don't know who I spoke to, didn't think I'd be here 4 or 5 years later, fighting my corner. I told council, so that's that. The second thing is the retaining wall. They put here the retaining wall in a bubble, 620, but why is it only on dwelling 2? Why is not the retaining wall mentioned in dwelling 3? And I did take a photo to show everyone this retaining wall. As Robert Estelle mentions, the wall goes right around. So if that is all in concrete and it bubbles up, it's going to go right into the back of my land. Okay, so it all comes down to this wall. At the original meeting that we had a couple of months ago, I can't remember when that was, we were promised an integrity report of the wall. We still haven't seen it yet. We were promised that. The dwellings are a lower height. Is that because the height of the building's gone down? Because he was definitely going in and out and in and out to raise that land up to get his nice view. And he just mentioned what needs to be done will be done, but he's done nothing yet. We've mentioned about the stormwater drainage. Why not look at that now and say, yes, we've got that stormwater drainage? Even listening now, we have a concrete wall. Where is that water going? He hasn't mentioned pipes going through the wall. Where is this water going out? I'm sorry, I'm not what everybody else is, but to me it just doesn't make sense. Where is the water going? I think that's it.
Thank you, Julie. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Tatchell.
Yes, sort of question. Can we have a look at the picture?
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask that too. If we could just pass it around while we're... that would be
We
lovely.
may have a question after that.
Yep.
Let's have a look at the picture.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Julie. Can Mr Lovell help us where that water's going now? That seemed to be
Mr Lovell?
Sorry, Madam Chair, can Councillor Ward just repeat a question?
Councillor Ward.
I think Julie's closing comment was there's a retaining wall now and the water is draining now. Where is it currently going?
Mr Bazet now.
Yeah. Madam Chair, we'll have to take that on notice. That's a current situation that I'll have to get advice on. What I can say is that a future development will cater for drainage and stormwater management.
Thank you, Mr Bazet now. Any other questions? Councillor Tatchell.
It's probably appropriate that everyone sees the picture first, I suppose. But that's your wall? Is that your fence?
Yes. That's the side. So we're on the side. So it's one of the side fences. Yeah.
Have we got a copy of the map? Have you got a different map of that wall? Textuals, I'd say.
So that's what it's down here. Is it would be. Because our land goes That's our land there. Like Judith is here, we're here. So that's pictures
Yeah, I know
taken
your
from
place,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, that,
That's, why can't we get a map like that?
We've got a smaller version, Councillor Tatchell. All right, we'll pass that around. I'll get Councillor Ward to ask a question while we're doing that.
Julie also made a comment, and this is a question for Mr Lovell, again, or officers, Henry, that at the initial meeting, Council promised Julie that there would be an integrity check done on the wall. Can you please explain that? My understanding would be that that may have been done at the building permit stage, but can you please respond to that?
Thank you, Mr Lovell.
So through the chair, sorry. There was a mediation process which actually was conducted at the Bland Chambers here. Information was sought about the retaining wall, and officers did mention that if it's less than that 1 metre in height, doesn't require planning permission. There is no requirement for a structural report on it, and there's been no evidence since then to require a structural report, because that would only occur with a building permit.
we're going to keep going around and around in circles here because you keep saying...
Sorry, Julie.
Oh, sorry. Don't answer him.
No, well, that question was from councillor to a officer. It was not a question to you, I'm sorry. So, does anyone else have a question? Councillor Tatchell.
That picture that was just provided there, could we show that to officers just for... I know we shouldn't do this either, I don't think, but anyhow, just in case.
Photos.
What are they going to do, put us in jail?
Okay, I think if there's no other questions...
Well, can we have the officers look at that first? And then maybe,
yes, that's fine.
There may be a question there.
I still had a minute. Can I just make one more comment? I didn't do my whole 3 minutes.
Not really, I'm sorry, Julie.
I just don't understand how you keep
Julie,
saying it's
Julie, I'm
retaining
sorry.
wall when no one's for it.
Excuse me, Julie, I'm sorry. I'll have to ask you to take a seat now, I'm sorry. I will just pause for a moment until councillors have finished having a look. He wrote it. Okay, all right. Okay, I'll call Mr James Estelle to the seat, and Mr Estelle, 3 minutes. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. Thanks for the opportunity to have a chat today. A couple of points I was keen to raise before you make a decision tonight. First one was looking on page 23 of the 26 of the recommendation. It shows that lot 76 is vacant land. My objection from the beginning is that I haven't had the opportunity to assess this because my property is there. It is not vacant. Mark has pointed out that this isn't something that is going to change, but I haven't been able to assess the impact to my property because I would need to go and expend money to get my property laid out in this to understand overlooking requirements. At the moment, I'm fairly certain the overlooking will look into my living space, and I can't completely assess that and put an objection in because we haven't been provided the information. This has been something that's been asked numerous times to council, and there has been no responses that no, you can work it out yourself. I think that as a ratepayer is not an appropriate way to deal with a lack of data, is to tell you to go sort it out yourself. So that's the first point, that I haven't been able to completely assess this because of lack of data. And the second point I'm keen to point out is around the stormwater, surprisingly. There is a lot, for people who don't understand, this land is extremely steep. And with the rain events that we have in Balan, our property, and as we've moved in beside it, has had substantial water come through the property from behind. And that is a very lowly developed property. We're seeing that 80+% of the land mass will be impermeable, and cannot see any connection to stormwater. The property needs to cut under 6 or 7 established massive gum trees to be able to access the lower point to drain away, and I don't think there is a possibility to deliver that. Our major concern is that we've got probably 10, 15 tonnes of concrete blocks that are sitting there adjoining my property and multiple other properties with no understanding of the drainage. It has been very clear that this is over 1 metre. This has been pointed out to the council many times and no one's come to site to look at it because there's still this opinion that there's only a metre, under 1 metre. And I think it would be very reckless of the council to approve this today with these known issues that are on record. I'm concerned as a ratepayer that this could be a substantial issue with a moving of many tonnes of concrete blocks down a hill in significant rain events at the end of this, if this isn't addressed at the moment.
Thank you, Mr Estelle. Any questions for Mr Estelle? Councillor Ward.
Yep, thank you, Mr Estelle. Did you say your property was 76 or 76A or B?
76B.
76B. So you're obviously at the bottom of the fall, are you? Yep. So how does your property currently cope with the water that would run down from that driveway between 78 and 76 into A and B?
We've got a substantial amount of drainage, and we, even if major rain events, we will have 2 or 3 inches of water running around our property and down, which we then capture, which will quickly drain away, but we will have rivers of water running down that hill.
Yep. Mark, did you? Pardon my inquisitiveness, but did you design and build 76B? Yes. Yep, you did. So you would have designed that drainage, I'd imagine, during the building permit stage to cope with that?
Yes, we did.
Yep.
We had substantial amount of design work at a very low level of detail to be able to achieve a planning permit, and that was all provided. And it was, we see that there is a lot. We were developing over 1/4 of an acre property. This is over about 3/4 of an acre, and this is about an acre. So there is a substantial difference, and we're not seeing the level of water management in relation to this one block, in my humble opinion.
And that was my last question. I was going to ask if you felt that during the design phase that you were able to design drainage for 76B to cope with that amount of water, why you didn't have that same level of confidence that this applicant may be able to do so. But I think you just commented on that then.
Yeah, the amount of development in this space is 80% plus, where we were putting 3 properties on a quarter acre each, and we still have a massive amount of runoff coming from that area where we see waterfalls down our hill with maybe 2 inches of running water down our hill, which we contain and capture in those events, but it is substantial, and that's with a very small level of development compared to this.
Any other questions for councillors? Councillor Dudzik.
Through the Mayor, I'd like to ask if council officers have actually been on site and measured this wall to see what its actual height is.
Mr Lovell.
No, both the plane officer and myself have been on site. We've actually walked around the site, but we have not measured that rear retaining wall.
Thank you, Mr Lovell. And Councillor Tatchell has a question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. There's a paper road that goes at the back of your place that...
It stops there. There's a provision for roads in Simpson Street, which is a walking path.
Yes. So the question will be to officers with that information. Is there drainage on that road? I know we haven't built the road, but there's been a number of complaints about the water that sits on that paper road, which is all connected to that drainage system. So.
Mr Lovell. Mr Bazout now.
Madam Mayor, I'll have to take that on notice and have a conversation with engineering.
Thank you. Any other questions from councillors? No? Thank you. Thank you, Mr Estelle. Okay. Councillors, you have a recommendation in your paperwork this evening. Do I have a councillor to move the recommendation outlined? Councillor Ward? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sullivan. Is there any dissent? Councillor Tatchell. We will go to a debate. I will ask Councillor Ward to open the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the officers have gone to great level of detail to point out that the retaining wall is going to be designed to the satisfaction of the building surveyor to cope with drainage. The last speaker obviously designed and built a house to adequately cope with drainage at 76B, and I'm confident that with the stormwater management plan that's been provided to the satisfaction of the officers, that the drainage point at the northeast corner will be designed to sufficiently cope with this, and to the satisfaction of the building surveyor, that will protect some of the concerns, protect the concerns raised by the concerned speakers.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Tatchell, as the opposing.
Of course, this is the second time, no?
Sorry.
Do you want to do something different?
No, sorry, I just realised Councillor Ward didn't have his microphone on. So for anyone listening online, did not hear, so...
I'm sure he'll be able to say it again.
I'll ask Councillor Ward to just take two. Thank you, Councillor Ward.
Apologies, Madam Mayor. I just said that I have confidence in this. The officers have worked with the applicant on the stormwater management plan to design this proposed development to cope with the drainage. The speaker that just spoke last, that lives in 76B, outlined how he designed and built his property to cope with the drainage. And I have confidence that with the drainage point in the northeast corner of the property, that during the building permit stage, the building surveyor will work with the applicants to make sure that the drainage concerns are addressed. I'd also point out that any future development on this site must be done to the satisfaction of the building surveyor, and Mr Lover went to great points to point that out. So I have confidence that all the concerns will be addressed and adequate drainage will be designed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. As the opposing, Councillor Tatchell.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. This has always been a complex plan, and even on its second showing, it's always probably asked more questions than answers, and I think that was obvious tonight when there were several questions that were taken on notice. And to me, that always makes me err on the side of caution. You know, we see a yellow light, we tend to back off a bit, and we see a red one, we stop. It's complex. There's the permeability of this property is extremely high in consideration of topography as well, and local knowledge of the water issues in that region, around that area, would suggest that you would always err on the side of safety. And I'm not convinced that the retaining walls and how they're pinned and how they're protected from residents in terms of the amount of retaining walls required to do this job, and the lack of engineering at the forefront of that when it does drain. Where there's once again, we had questions there that were taken on notice, and that's always a concern because, you know, once you approve something, and it's a bit late to wish you'd done something else when there's something happening. I'm sure the people at Treadbow would say exactly the same thing about the buildings up there, and I'm sure if you spoke to the guy that was underneath that building for a long time, you'd be saying the same thing as well. I wish they'd spent another 10 minutes on the engineering or made sure that the calculations in terms of this topography were actually far more exact than within 15%. In this case, it's actually a bit more than 15%. So that too is a concern. So I'm not suggesting for one moment that the developer is not going to do the job properly. What I am concerned about is if we'd done the job properly over a number of years throughout the land in a lot of sections, we wouldn't have these drainage questions, and they come up continually where we have not that old developments where we end up with an unintended consequence of drainage that usually lands on somebody else's doorstep. And we heard from Mr Esdale, and I actually know the property behind his, and whilst that may be considered to be a fair way away from where this development is, it also needs to be taken into consideration that the northeast drain point would actually head in that direction, and hence that's why we see the water levels there now during heavy storms. So sometimes over and above the building permit, there needs to be a lot more consideration put into the bigger picture and not have questions that at some point in time there could be a wish that, gee, I wish we had another look at it, or I wish we'd have requested something more into conditions to protect it. So I'm not against the development, don't get me wrong. But what I don't want to, what I do want to do is make sure that we mitigate any risks for other residents and mitigate any other risks for council. And maybe this particular development is a good case to then relook at what amount of detail in terms of engineering do we require for retaining walls, and should we be re-looking at that from a pinning them down point of view. It's one thing to put them on the surface, but it's another thing to say what holds them down, and that all comes back to the engineering and the management of the materials that sit within that retaining wall to make sure that under hydrostatic pressure we don't end up with a situation where the retaining wall is not being retained. So whilst I'm not against the actual development, I think there's far too many questions here tonight that haven't been answered. I think there's far many questions tonight that have been taken on notice, and I'd much rather see all of those questions answered so that the people that are doing the development and the people that are surrounded by this development can all sleep at night and know that we've done everything in our power to make sure that this job's been done properly. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tatchell. Councillor Sullivan as the seconder, would you wish to speak?
Just a few comments, Madam Mayor. This application was lodged in December 2022. So 16 months ago this has been going through the process, and it's come to a DAC meeting previously, and again it was sort of deferred then because of some concerns that people had. I remind you that this is a planning permit for the use, not a building permit. And it's not unusual at a planning permit stage to you don't get into the finer grain of the detail that's required for construction. Not dissimilar if this was a planning permit for a subdivision, we don't get down into the fine detail of the construction requirements. They are documents that come from, there's a stepped process, they come along later. There's been a bit of conjecture about drainage. The drainage easement that shows up on the property to the north was set aside on the same subdivision that created this lot, that is my understanding, based on the lot numbers and the volume and folio numbers. So I think there is a legal point of discharge there. Whether there's pipes in the ground or not, I don't know, but that have a legal discharge at that point, which takes it down to Simpson Street. So I think all in all, I think there is safeguards there with respect to drainage. I do note that Melbourne Water have a condition in there as well. Now, they are a drainage authority, and they are quite strident in making sure that things are done correctly. So I think, and that requires a separate permit. You need a separate application to Melbourne Water. So again, there's an embedded in this document to apply for an application to another authority. So and that's not unusual. That's a common cause of events. So I think all in all, it's been through a tortuous process. The officers have, I believe, done a very good job in trying to address all those issues, and I would then commend the motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Any other councillors? Councillor Dudzik.
I thought that the objectors would be happy with the amended plans because of the reduced heights. I thought that would ease some of their concerns, but there's still too many questions being asked, and I am concerned about the flooding issue, and for me, I don't feel comfortable approving it without further information proving that issue is under control.
Thank you, Councillor Dudzik. Is there any other councillor that wishes to speak? Councillor Berry.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I too am a bit concerned with unanswered questions, and although I like the idea, we need new housing opportunities in our place, but I'd like to see this thoroughly, the questions come back. I also had experience myself with a retaining wall in Bacchus Marsh and lived on quite a steep property where we had to spend thousands of dollars, and it was an engineer who did develop our house that we bought. So it just worries me, all this drainage and the unanswered questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. I'll pass back to Councillor Ward for the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to reiterate the comments made by Councillor Sullivan. I do think there is some confusion tonight about a planning permit and a building permit. Councillor Tatchell made the comment, you know, we don't want to get to the stage where we're going to make a comment that we wish we'd had another look, because we are getting another look. The retaining wall, if it's going to exceed a metre in height, Councillor Tatchell said, you know, we need to look at the detail required for retaining walls. Well, it's very clearly articulated. If a retaining wall is going to exceed a metre in height, a building permit will be required by the building surveyor. So the building surveyor has to sign off on this. Council is getting another look at it. A stormwater management plan has been done to the satisfaction of the relevant authorities. And I think us asking for information that normally would be provided at building design and building permit stage, we're actually not following the planning guidelines. So I think the applicant has showed that they're willing to listen to concerns raised by those who have objections. They've reduced the heights of the buildings. They've provided a stormwater management plan to the satisfaction of the relevant authorities. And the concerns, if they remain, will be addressed during the building permit stage. So I think, you know, we're trying to turn planning on its head here. I commend the application to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. We will now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? It is carried. Thank you. Item 8, update of trends, issues and other matters. I will ask Executive Manager of Community Planning and Development, do you have any updates for the committee?
No updates, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Item 9, update of the VCAT decisions. Any updates on VCAT decisions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's no new updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Bazout now. Item 10, other business. Councillors, I'll go around the room. Councillor Sullivan, do you have any business?
No other business, Madam Mayor.
No. Councillor Ward?
No other business, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Tatchell?
I just want to note, I think the applicant saw that it was knocked back.
I think you're correct.
He did. Yeah, he thought.
Councillor, Mr Bazout now, are we able to...
No, he said he's going to VCAT because he's going to...
Were we able to chase him down? Thank you. Councillor Tatchell, was there any other business?
No, I reckon that was an important one, though.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that note. Councillor Berry?
No, sent me into a giggle. No, Madam Mayor, thank you.
Councillor Dudzik?
No urgent business, thanks.
Thank you. Councillors, item 11, date of next meeting. The next Development Assessment Committee meeting is scheduled for the Wednesday, the 15th of May 2024. Thank you to councillors, officers and members of the public for attending this evening's meeting. I will now declare the meeting closed. Thank you.